Yeah, is the sound working? Can you guys hear? Any better now? Just let me know in the comments. Can't hear. Yeah, you can hear? Okay, excellent. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alright, so first of all, I just want to mention a little bit about the Quran and Revelation. So the Quran and Revelation, this is something which is very important to understand. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent down the Quran, He revealed the Quran to the Arabs. And it was, the way it was sent down was, it was sent down and verses would become apparent according to incidents. So for example, like in the Quran, the incident of the Battle of Badr took place. So verses related to Badr were revealed. And the incident of the changing of the Qibla took place. And then verses were revealed regarding that. And the incidents of other battles that took place, and things even before migration, beginning of Islam. So verses were being revealed over these 23 years. So when verses are being revealed, it's very important for anyone studying the Quran to know what we call the contextualization of verses. So when a verse is revealed regarding, let's say, hypocrites, then what's the benefit of that? So there were like some main hypocrites in Medina, and one of the main ones was a guy called Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul. So when the verses were revealed regarding him, now what that basically means for us is that the lessons that we can learn from Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul's behavior and his character and the way he caused problems for the Muslims and the Prophet ﷺ, this is something that we can see in our own societies, in our own lives. So there's Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul in our lives. Just like the Quran mentions about Musa alayhi salam, about Fir'aun. So in our times, there are elements of Fir'aun in our time. So certain aspects of Fir'aun, that he thought he was better than everyone else. He thought that he's the one that deserves to be worshipped. He belittled other people. He slaughtered children. So you see elements of this. Sometimes you might see all the things of Fir'aun in a person. Sometimes you might just see one. And sometimes you might see, a handful of things. And that's how we have to look at the Quran. That's how the Quran becomes relevant to us. That when we read the Quran, we're not going to find what the Quran says in our life exactly verbatim. But what we have to do is we have to understand the Quran as lessons. So when it was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, if you were living there and you saw the verses manifest in the form that it manifested, events, incidents that took place, then whenever later on in your life you saw incidents take place, verses would come to your mind. And lessons that you learned from the Quran would become in front of your eyes. And this is something where a lot of people who read the Quran, they can't see this. So all they see is a translation, and they see it as a historic book and historic events and historic characters and people that are mentioned in there. So when they try to see in today's times, and you see the West, or you see the East, or you see developing countries and multinational companies that are usurping the rights of the poor, where is this in the Quran? Where in the Quran is it mentioned about Lut alayhi salam? Where in the Quran is it mentioned about in the Quran it's mentioned about Lut alayhi salam, but where in our society today can we learn the lessons of the people of Lut? Where can we learn the lessons of atheism from the Quran? So we're not going to find these titles exactly as they are. We have to use due diligence. We have to use investigation, understanding of the Arabic language, understanding of the text, reading the Quran again and again and again, and then it starts to click inside our minds. So this is the benefit of studying the Quran, understanding the Quran in context. So when you understand it in context, a lot of the kind of questions that people have, that why are we following this book, it becomes more relevant. That this book is actually a book which is like the code, the life of the Sahaba, you can imagine, was like the blueprint for all societies until the Day of Judgment. In other words, the verses that were revealed, the lessons that we can learn in their lives, are like the seeds of all the problems and all the goods that we can see in our society today. We can take lessons from there. We can kind of derive things from that time. So you can imagine this was like a blueprint. Their life, the 23 years that the Prophet ﷺ lived amongst them, the problems they had, the good times they had, the successes they had, all of this we can see in our times today. And in our times today, we might see a few elements of it here, we might see some more elements of it, in another place, and then we can create a bigger picture of this. Anyway, so I thought I'd mention that to you guys. Now I'm going to be answering your questions, inshallah. So, alright, so let's have a look at some of the questions. So first, let me answer these Curious Cat questions, and then I'll answer your questions. So, okay, where did we leave off last time? Okay, I think we started from here. So the question is this: is it possible for a person to have strong iman and faith in Allah but then not fulfill the commandments such as prayer and zakat due to their own weaknesses? So let me explain something. When we say a person has iman in Allah, basically what that means is a person, their certitude about Allah, like their certainty that Allah Ta'ala exists and the certainty that Allah's promises are going to be fulfilled, all of these things is called faith. Right, so the faith, the iman, it can be strong, it can be weak. The more certain you are that Allah is going to do this, then the stronger your iman is going to be. The more stronger your faith is going to be, this is going to result in byproducts. And one of the byproducts of having strong faith is you're going to want to fulfill the commands of Allah. So this is where obedience is a byproduct of strong faith in Allah Ta'ala. And sometimes it kind of it acts like a catalyst as well. So having strong faith in Allah, it leads to obedience in Allah, and then having obedience in Allah, it sometimes strengthens the faith, so it kind of boosts itself. It's like one of those motors that regenerates itself. So sometimes it works like that, sometimes it doesn't. But the main thing is that every time you have strong faith in Allah, you believe in the promises of Allah, you're so certain about Allah Ta'ala as though you can see Him, then it will naturally lead that you're going to obey Him. Right? So obedience to Allah, it will happen when your iman is strong. So it's not possible that a person will become lazy in their acts of worship and at the same time their faith is strong. That doesn't make sense, because it's like you're looking at Allah and then at the same time you're lazy. Right? It doesn't work, because if you can believe with such high certitude that Allah exists and Allah's promises are true and whatever Allah has told you is going to happen, then you will naturally want to obey Him. Right? You naturally want to obey Him. So it will lead to that. So I would say no. So if a person is weak in their prayers, like the Quran mentions about people who are lazy, and it's due to weakness in their belief in the hereafter, weakness in the belief in Allah Ta'ala. So may Allah grant us strong faith. Okay, when you talk now the other thing is this: sometimes what can happen is that sometimes we can become deluded into thinking that, like, it can work like this. Like sometimes we become deluded because we've been praying for so many years and giving zakat and fasting. We become deluded in thinking that we have strong faith. So it doesn't work the other way around. So in other words, a person who prays all the time and gives zakat and fasts and all this doesn't necessarily mean their faith is strong. They might be praying because of other reasons. I mean, sometimes a person prays because from a young age they've been praying and they just can't stop doing it. It's like the Christian who goes to the church, right? Same kind of thing. Maybe they're brought up doing that. The Hindu going to the temple, maybe they're brought up doing that, and they just do it because it's something which they feel bad leaving. So sometimes a Muslim feels bad leaving prayer, feels bad not giving zakat, feels bad, but that doesn't mean that it it necessitates strong faith. Yeah. So the other way, strong faith will necessitate obedience, but doing the acts doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing it out of obedience, right? Sometimes a woman wears a headscarf. It doesn't mean that she's wearing a headscarf because she's got strong faith in Allah. It might be because she feels pressure. She feels that if she doesn't wear it, what are people going to say? It feels bad. Maybe not what people are going to say. Maybe it just feels bad to her if she doesn't wear it. And some women will wear it because they truly have strong faith in Allah, strong iman, and they're wearing it because of that. Okay, next question. When you talk about the Quran and linguistic points, it reminds me of studying English language in school when you study poetry stories where they study what is being said in great detail. What I don't understand is this: what if the author didn't mean any of what we think? Like if we read a line of poetry and find out 10 different linguistic points, but the author didn't intend any of what we found, it wasn't deliberate. What if that's the same with Quran? Like we're trying to find things in which weren't intended. I don't know if I'm making sense. Yeah, okay. Good. This is a good question. So there's a scholar. I'm just going to mention something. There's a scholar in the world at the moment. He's probably one of the experts in Arabic grammar and balagha in the current Arab world. His name is Dr. Fadil Salih Samurai. Right, you can find out about him. So the reason why he actually started off learning Arabic grammar was because of this question, and he actually wrote a book on it. He calls the book From Doubt to Certainty. So he actually has gone through a journey of doubting the Quran, and he has an interview, and in the interview he says, one of the reasons why I started this journey was because I used to think Muslims deliberately, they try to force interpret the Quran, meaning they try to force their all these kind of miraculous things that they see onto the Quran. And he says that's what every religion does. The Christians do it with their book, the Jews do it with their book, the Hindus might do it with their book, and some other faiths may do it as well. So everyone is trying to sanctify their book with as much as they can. So there's going to be lots of things which a Christian will do to their book and show, like, look at this in our Bible, this word comes this many times, and this word is mentioned, and it's been translated in this many languages. So he goes, this made me think about Islam. And he said, I used to think that maybe Muslims are doing this with their book, and the Quran is from God. Yeah, but maybe this was, and he said, I even had doubts. Like, he was agnostic at one point, basically. I even had doubts whether God exists or not. So he said, I wanted to work out for myself whether what these people are saying, right, in Arabic grammar and balagha, whether this is exaggeration from their own behalf, and there's no factual evidence for this, or empirical evidence that can back this up, or whether there is. So he said, I started my journey and I began to study Arabic grammar, and I went through the major books, classical books, and then eventually he says, I myself became certain that it is impossible for any human to actually have written the Quran. He goes, that's what my years of, I don't know how many years, a decade or so, he spent on this. And he goes, it became clear to me that it's impossible for any human to have been able to write the Quran. And he goes, this is because the Arabic language was so rich, and you said you can only understand this if you understand the Arabic language at the time when the Quran was revealed. And if you look at the genre and the wording and the depth of wording that they used at that time, he goes, you can only appreciate that time. So from an early age, like English poetry has probably only been discussed a few hundred years. Arabic poetry has been discussed and criticized and critiqued, right? There is so much depth into Arabic poetry, so much studies that go on, and not just for hundreds of years. It's actually for over 1,000 years, way before Islam even. People were critiquing each other in Arabic poetry. So in other words, the Arabs were way ahead of their time when it came to understanding linguistic subtleties in the language. And there's many examples of this in Arabic poetry, where people used to point out certain things to the poets, and the poets deliberately had structured the words in certain ways to achieve certain expressions and meanings and emotions. So that's why when you look at the Quran, I totally understand when people try to exaggerate this and they try to do it with books other than the Quran. But with the Quran, when you study the Quran, you can only taste this, you can only appreciate this once you have truly learnt Arabic language which was spoken at the time of the Sahaba. Yeah, this is something you have to try yourself. Like if I tell you, for example, like this is 100% and this is certainty, etc., you're accepting it because you have respect for me, maybe, and you're accepting it secondhand, right? So it's like me being standing in an art museum, right, and looking at a beautiful work of art and telling you what the artwork looks like without you actually seeing it for yourself. So whenever you tell people about this artwork, you're always going to tell it through my lens, through what I've seen. Yeah, and you're just going to have to rely on me. But if you learn the Arabic language, and you can learn it at the level of the Sahaba. Yeah, that's not something exaggerated. And you learn it for yourself, and you'll be able to understand it. Yeah, that's the basic answer to that question. Hope that answers it. Okay, to what extent must we verify whether food at a restaurant is halal? I live in a country where halal food is generally available, but some imported processed ingredients can be potentially not halal. Is it enough if a restaurant owners tell us that the food is halal? Will we be responsible if they've lied? I mean, if you ask me what I do, if I go to a restaurant, I see the sign halal there, and I see respectable Muslim people there, then I'll accept it. And if I'm in doubt, I'll ask them, is the food halal? And if they say to me yes, then I don't investigate further. I accept it, and on face value, a Muslim's word is considered to be weighty. But if that particular individual has been known for having dubious business in the past, track record, then I wouldn't eat there. Yeah, that's how I do things. So I think if you want to use that as your own sort of rule of the thumb, then you can do that. Yeah. So if you think food is dubious, stay away from it. Maybe your friend might not find it dubious. Your friend might feel that eating this place is fine. If he feels that way, then you can't criticize him. So haram food, which is haram, and the signs are indicating the food is haram, you cannot eat there. But if there is, on the other side, if the preponderance is that the food is considered to be halal, then you can eat there, I would say. Okay. Walaikum salam. What is your view on Sufism and purification of the heart in general? Number 2, I currently attend a regular dhikr session where group dhikr and qasaid are performed aloud, as well as a bayan on different Islamic topics. What are your views on this? What are your views on becoming a murid of a Sufi order? Okay, so there's 3 questions here. So the first question, what is your view on Sufism, purification of the heart in general? So purification of the heart is something every Muslim, is fard on every Muslim to purify their heart. Yeah, it's fard on every single Muslim. They have to purify their heart, and that's one of the main duties of being a Muslim is to rectify yourself, and rectifying your heart, your intentions, why you're doing things, rectifying, if you have anger problems, if you have jealousy problems, if you have ignorance, if you have abuse, and you have other problems, then rectifying these is considered to be the most, or one of the most important things that a Muslim has to do. So definitely there are different ways to rectify. Like for example, imagine there's a cake, and there could be 3 or 4 different ways of making that cake. The aim is to make the cake, whatever method you use to make that cake, you can make it. So Islam doesn't give you a method of rectifying yourself. Islam tells you to rectify yourself, and it gives you some steps, sometimes some pointers, main sort of like concepts or principles. And as long as you kind of try your best to purify your heart, then that's fine. Some people might find reading the Quran, reading stories of the prophets, reading about the pious people in the Quran, that it makes their heart tremble, and it leads to a kind of state where a person wants to become a better person. Yeah, it kind of starts. So this is one of the ways you rectify your heart. This isn't the way of rectifying your heart, but this is one of the ways. And then sometimes a person might be in the company of good people. The Quran says, be with truthful people. So being with truthful people, it has an effect on you. It rubs off on you. You feel like becoming truthful as well. So their good characters and their traits, they start to manifest in your life as well. And another way could be, like for example, you're very weak and you need someone to kind of mentor you. You can say, just like some people need mentoring in apprenticeships and studies and etc. So some people need spiritual mentoring. So spiritual mentoring is what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. So many Sahaba used to do as well, right? So they would like kind of point out faults in other people. So imagine you go up to a person and you say to a person who you believe is a pious person and you believe that their piety is of a good level, and you say to them, look, can you give me tips, like, you know, like a coach, yeah, like, you know, sports coach. You say, is it okay if I train with you? Can you give me tips on how to improve my sport? Can you, like, I play badminton, so I go to someone and I say to him, you know, is it okay if you mentor me? You show me some moves and some serves and this and that. That's fine. So you can do it in spirituality as well. Yeah, you can. And people read books. I mean, a book is like a written mentor, and a living person is a better mentor because they can look at your situation and they might be able to kind of diagnose your problem to you, because you might not be aware of your problem, and they might be able to actually, you know, point out tips on how to improve yourself, like a, you know, psychologist can do. So totally fine. I have no issue with that. So that's generally regarding purification. If the person that you are with, like for example mentoring under, if that person has very bad views or is a bad person in other things or performs things which are contrary to Islam, then avoid them. Yeah, so if you go to a badminton coach and this badminton coach is showing you illegal serves, or for example like he's showing you some moves that are not in the rules of the game, then stay away from him. Okay, number 2, I currently attend a dhikr gathering. So if you attend a dhikr gathering and qasa'id and these kind of things, totally fine. Sahaba used to have gatherings of dhikr and qasa'id, poetry they used to sing and they used to listen to it. Totally fine. There's ikhtilaf among scholars of whether dhikr should be done aloud or whether it should be done quietly. That's a difference of opinion, that is. So if you feel that you don't like dhikr aloud and you're inclined towards those who say dhikr should be done quietly, that's fine. If you're inclined toward those who say that dhikr should be done aloud, can be done aloud, then that's fine as well. It's a valid ikhtilaf. What are your views on one becoming a murid of a Sufi? Well, again, answer that in the first one. It's like finding a mentor for spirituality, like finding a mentor for a sport that you want to improve yourself in, and trying to tweak yourself. So the whole point of having a sheikh or a peer or whatever and becoming a murid is you want to tweak your level of getting close to Allah, proximity to Allah. Yeah. Hope that answers the question. Right, next. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. What should the masbook do if he stands before the imam, does sajda as-sahu? Okay, stands before the imam, does sajda sahu. Should the masbook stand after the first or second salam? Okay. What should the masbook do if he stands before the... Okay, I see what happened. So basically, you joined the imam late, and what happened was when the imam gave salam, you thought that he finished his salat, and so you got up, and then you didn't realize that the imam was actually going to go into sajda sahu. So you're standing up and the imam's gone back into sajda and everyone else is in sajda. So what do? So you simply sit down, go into sajda, and then afterwards, after the imam gives salam again, you get up and you make up your rakats that you missed. Yeah, simple as that. Ideally, you should get up after the second salam. Yeah, and it's very rare that the imam will, after the second salam, he'll do sajda sahu. But yeah, second salam. And if you after the first salam, it's also jais. Okay, wa alaikum assalam. Does sleeping, dozing off in salah invalidate the prayer? According to most of the Hanafis, no, it doesn't. Right, as long as the postures in salat are not postures of outside of salat. So standing, ruku, sujood, these kind of things, tashahud, they won't break your salat. There's like an ikhtilaf of some of the Hanafis with regards to certain postures, like if a person does sajda but not in the sunnah way, then and goes to sleep. There's ikhtilaf about that, but generally I would say no. Okay, test. Someone's just said test. Alright, test. Pass your test. What does Islam say about abortion? So abortion is basically where a woman has a fetus, right, and the sperm has met with the egg and started to fertilize, and so for 9 months this fertilized egg is inside the womb of the mother and it's growing now. So is a person allowed to terminate this fetus in these 9 months? So generally the scholars say no. However, some of the Hanafis, they say that if there is a valid reason, then there is a time period where the fetus can be terminated, right? And they generally say up to 4 months, but there has to be a valid reason. A person has to speak to an expert about this for that. If there is a dire medical reason which is going to cause big problems, then at any time in the process, it can be aborted, right? If it's a very, like for example, the doctor has said the mother will definitely die if she doesn't abort the child. So if it's a very high degree of certitude that the mother will die, then at any time it can be, because a human life that is alive is more important than one that hasn't come into existence yet. But like I said, in the first stage, where there's no problem or anything, but there is some sort of like an issue in that person's life, then they need to speak to a scholar to see if there is scope about it. So there's one of my friends who's actually writing a paper on abortion at the moment in Islam, in the Hanafi fiqh. Once that's ready, inshallah, you can have a read of that. But generally, human life, according to Islam, human life is important. Once that life has come into existence and the soul has been put into the fetus, that life has a sanctity now, and so it has to be respected. Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're well. Alhamdulillah, I'm well. My question was, as there are some du'as that are preserved forever in the Quran, made by previous prophets and nations, e.g. Rabbana zalamna anfusana, Rabbi zidni ilma, is there any du'a that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made that then got preserved into the Quran? I don't think there's any specific du'a that he made that's in the Quran. I mean, if anyone knows, they can put it up. But there are like some of his statements that many of the Mufassirin have said were recorded of his statements. For example, like in the Quran, Allah says about when some of the Sahaba they left their posts in the Battle of Uhud, and then Allah says, وَالرَّسُولُ يَدْعُوكُمْ فِي أُخْرَاكُمْ, and the Rasul, the messenger, was calling you from behind. He was calling you. So that is recorded in the Quran. Or for example, like Allah says, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ إِنْ يَا رَبِّي, the messenger said, "Oh my Rabb, إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا, my people have betrayed this Quran, have left this Quran, thrown it away." Yeah, and Mufassirin say most likely this Rasul is meant the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, and the context seems to indicate towards that. As for any specific du'a like Rabbana du'as, besides that, I don't think there's any. I can't think of any. I mean, if anyone knows, let me know. If a person needs to sit and pray but is able to do sajda, then should they sit on the floor and pray or sit on a chair? So ideally on the floor. They should sit on the floor in the tashahhud position if they can, otherwise in any position. If they can't sit on the floor, if getting up from the floor and getting down onto the floor is hard for them, they can sit on a raised platform like a chair. Yeah, but ideally they should attempt to sit on the floor. And sometimes in these masjids now, everyone just sits on chairs now. If they're just ill, they just, instead of sitting on the floor, and many of them I think might be able to sit on the floor, but they just sit on a chair, and that's wrong. There is. Yeah, so you should try to sit on the floor. I've started a new medication recently and have noticed that it has been affecting my discharge. I normally get discharged quite regularly, but it's only a certain amount and not too much. The last few days it's been thinner and clearer and leaves my underwear wet. I think this is due to the medication. Is this breaking my wudu? Okay, so the rule for discharge with regards to women, this is, so this, I presume this is a women's masala. Then according to Imam Hanifa, discharge doesn't break your wudu, right? So if you are suffering from this, then I would say you can take the position of Imam Hanifa and assume that discharge does not break your wudu. And if you have time to do some wudu, maybe you can do it, but generally it won't be considered to be breaking your wudu, because especially when you're taking medication, so it's that the discharge is not something which is like technically impure that's coming out, because according to Imam Hanifa, discharge isn't necessarily impure unless it comes out with due to some sort of ailment, illness, or sexual arousal. Okay, I hope that answers that. But the Sahibain, they say it does. But I would say in your situation, you can take the position of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Okay, so those questions are done now. Right, let's look at these other questions now. Right. Okay, so let's start from the top. Wa alaikum assalam, everyone. Now I'm going to look at your messages. So if you wrote something. Alright, so if someone has given his wife one talaq, can he take her back over the phone? Do you need witnesses? No. No need to have any witnesses or anything. You can take her back. Witnesses will only be needed if, for example, like the wife takes it to court and the judges. So witnesses are only needed for like judicial reasons. So it can be done over the phone. It's totally fine. Yeah. Is it okay to get food cooked and then feed it to poor out of zakat money? We were told we can't do it. You can't, like, what you can't do is you can't make a meal and then invite people to eat and go. You can't do that. What you can do is you can package the food, parcel it. And this is in Pakistan. This is what some of the the restaurants used to do. So they would collect zakat money from givers. So they would take food, parcel food into like meals, and then each meal they would give to a poor person as zakat. So the idea is basically that in zakat you have to give someone the zakat or whatever that zakat form is. So if it's in the form of cash, you got to give them it, tamlik. If it's in the form of food, you give them the food. Now, whatever they want to do with that food is up to them. The reason why you can't invite them to your house and eat in your house as zakat is because that is not considered to be tamlik. That's considered to be ibaha. So you're kind of giving an open invitation for someone to come and just eat and go. So they can't really do anything with that food except put it in their mouths. So the idea is tamlik. So tamlik is considered where a person has the ability to take the item and to do whatever they want with it. So if you invited someone to your house and then that person said, look, I don't want to eat, I just want the food, and you packaged it for them and you gave them as zakat, that would be allowed. Okay, is it okay to get for intellect? Okay, I think that's a private conversation there. Next, why Ahmed? Any suggestions of ulum al-Quran books? Not too detailed but covers majority of the subject topics. Okay, so why do you want to study ulum al-Quran? That's the question. My teacher, I studied ulum al-Quran with my teacher, or some of it, and he was writing his own ulum al-Quran. So it was like a summary of the major books of ulum al-Quran in history that many of the scholars have written. It was like a summary of that, and from tafsirs as well. If you want to, like ulum al-Quran, there's two kind of books you can get out there. You can get books which are called ulum al-Quran, which basically kind of they demarcate or they define for you certain terms that are used by the mufassirin, right? So for example, like, what does Meccan hadith ayah mean? What does Medinan ayah mean? What does why in the Quran is the script like this for? How many different scripts were there in history? How many different qira'at are there? How many different what's the ikhtilaf with regards to the 7 ahruf of the Quran, etc, etc, etc. These are just like general things to do with the history of, you can say, Quran, not to do with like the detail of the Quran itself. So ulum al-Quran won't like kind of break down verses for you. It won't give you any more extra information about the content of the Quran. What it will do, it will give you more information about the things around the Quran. Yeah, so the mufassirin, tafsirs, how tafsirs are approached, different types of tafsirs, other sort of figures in history who had important contributions towards tafsir, etc. If you want one of those, then I would suggest for you, for example, like Itqan by Suyuti is one of the good ones that you can do. But if you want one that discusses things inside the Quran, then I would suggest books like Al-Fawzul Kabir. Fawzul Kabir is very good for that. Yeah, and personally, I'm not too much into ulum al-Quran books. I mean, I've studied them, but I'm not too much into that. I'm going to start a Fawzul Kabir series, inshallah, once I get the camera, and once I learn how to edit with the camera and all that, because that's going to take a bit of time. I'm going to do a series on Fawzul Kabir. So I've done an introduction on Fawzul Kabir. If you guys have checked it out on my YouTube channel, I've got introduction on Fawzul Kabir, and that's basically one of the ulum al-Quran books. So watch that, have a look at that. And yeah, I think the most important thing is, if you want to understand ulum al-Quran, like, what do you want from it? That's the question. Do you want to understand the depths of the Quran, ayats of the Quran? So some of the people, some of the scholars, my teacher, he was really into that. like trying to understand breakdown of the Quran. Yeah. So for example, like maybe you want to know, for example, how is spending in the Quran explained? What are the different things you have to spend on? The different people, the different types of spending, the different areas of spending, how much to spend, what not to spend on, all these kind of things. Or for example, salat in the Quran, or for example, like Hajj in the Quran, or the history of the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran. And these kind of things are very interesting. I find these very interesting. So it depends what you're looking for. Alaikum assalam, MP. Okay, I've been told that we shouldn't go out after Maghrib because there are hadith that forbid us to do so. Now in countries like Pakistan, in summer, it's impossible to step out of the house. Yeah, so those narrations, what we say is that those narrations with regards to the prohibition of locking the doors after Maghrib and not letting the children out, these are in those kind of areas where, so at night, basically, we know that at night thieves roam around at night and bad people roam around at night, and so there's more of a chance of a person, being abused at night than there is in the day. So that's one of the reasons why people were told to lock their doors as well at night. And the other is because of other harmful things as well, nocturnal creatures. Amongst them are jinn, amongst them are other things, that animals, that come out at night that can harm people. So this was the main kind of reason why people were told to do this. This is what I would say. So if there's no fear of leaving at night time, it's fine. Like nowadays, if you go to Makkah, Medina, after Maghrib, mashallah, that's when people start going out to the Haram and places like that. So the prohibition is not a timeless prohibition for everyone. It's restricted to those areas where after going out after Maghrib, where there's no lighting or anything, where it's dangerous. I mean, when we were kids, we used to, like, after Maghrib, that's when we used to play. And well, obviously we never used to know Maghrib them days, but it was like dark, and we used to play hide and seek, and we used to play, trekking, and I don't know if you guys have heard of these kind of games we used to play. There'd be some dangerous ones, hiding under cars, hiding under parked cars, very dangerous. Yeah, how do we understand these hadith? Okay, so those hadith are contextualizing those hadith then. Yeah, so contextualizing it, because if we look at other hadith, we find people leaving at night time as well, and especially in the days of Sahaba and Tabi'een, people leaving, going for, and nowadays people going to the Haram, Masjid Nabawi after Maghrib all night. Okay, how are you? How did the hot weather treat you? Alhamdulillah, hot weather was very nice. Yeah, I've got my fan on. Yeah, I've got some tea as well, as you can see. And yeah, it's very hot today, isn't it? I mean, I don't know where you guys are, but yeah, here today was very hot. And I was doing some burning outside as well. Not burning as in like burning in the sun, like burning wood and things, some scrap. Yeah, so yeah, it's very hot, man. Okay, there's a hadith, a long hadith that lines that if someone performs Hajj properly, he'll go back to as a sinless child. Why do some scholars then put the condition that only minor sins will be forgiven? So this is like a very good question, because this comes in many things, like Ramadan as well. There's one hadith about Ramadan, if one who abstains from eating and drinking and those things in Ramadan, and then he'll leave Ramadan as though he's sinless. So these kind of a hadith, the reason why many of the scholars say that it refers to minor sins is because there's a clear text for asking Allah for forgiveness. So the question now comes is that, is it possible for Allah to forgive someone's sins without them asking Allah to forgive them, simply by doing an action? Yeah, so for example, like a person has committed, like drank alcohol, or a person has fornicated, or a person has murdered someone. Is it possible for that person to simply just pray some salat or give some charity and that sin will be forgiven? So no, because that doesn't make sense. Like if Allah tells you that you have to turn back to Allah, you have to repent to Him, then clearly you have to do that. Right? So that's like the categorical text that is. But then we have hadith which say that your sins will be forgiven if you fast the day of Arafat, then your past previous year's sins and then the future year's sins will be forgiven. Or if you fast on the day of Ashura, your previous year's sin will be forgiven. So they say what this means is that minor sins. Right? And this is what seems to be the case. That, for example, like there was an incident where a man committed a particular sin, and he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ said to him, have you prayed your Asr? He said, yeah. And then he quoted the verse of the Quran, that Innal hasanat yudhibna sayyat. Good deeds, they wipe out bad deeds. So what was meant by that was good deeds, as in the Salat al-Asr that he prayed, will wipe out the bad deeds which were not at the level of being so severe in Islam. Like there were bad things that they done, but it wasn't really severe. So it's like the minor kind of sins are like washed away, wiped away. But the bad sins, for example, like certain Sahaba who didn't go for the battle of, I forgot the name of the battle, man. So the battle near the end of Islam, Tabuk, battle of Tabuk. So they didn't go. It wasn't enough for them just to go to the masjid and pray. In fact, they had to make sincere tawbah for over 50 days. They had to go through, so many difficulties, right? That was part of their tawbah. So tawbah comes in different forms. So this is why, the scholars have put conditions on this. If a rich person lives in a very simple life with intention that simplicity is something encouraged in Islam, would he be rewarded? He's not spending money on the poor, it's just sitting there in his bank. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, if a person's intention is that they want to live a simple life. But why do they want to live a simple life for? I don't understand. I mean, a person can be rich and live a simple life as well with all the luxuries. Like, relatively speaking, compared to other rich people of that level, their life can be very simple as well. Like, if there's a person who's very rich, millionaire, and they want to live in a cave, or they want to live in a tent in the back garden, I mean, I don't see how that would bring them closer to Allah. So, I mean, I don't know. The whole idea of simplicity is that a person can, take all the distractions away from them and focus on getting closer to Allah. Yeah, that simplicity is like, what's that kind of this new kind of rage thing where people they have very few items in their house. Forgot what it's called. They have like very few items. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that. I mean, some people say, oh, in Islam we should only do that at home. We shouldn't have a bed, sleep on the floor. Yeah, Sahabas never had beds. Or we shouldn't drive cars. We should walk to work. Or we should have camels or animals. So these kind of things, I think, these are kind of like these are making Islam too oversimplifying Islam, I think. Okay, but what if they are lying? What if they are lying? I don't understand. What if they are lying about what? Okay, you're gonna have to explain it. What was that? Does studying advanced books of Nahu help us with reading and understanding book in Arabic? Okay, so if when you study Nahu or any subject, there's two roots. Okay, there's always two roots. Just like my channel, Roots of Knowledge. There's always two routes you take. One is you want to learn the subject, and one is you want to learn the history of the subject. It depends what you want. I would personally say both are very important. If you want to become a master of the Quran, both are very important. If you just want to be able to understand the structure of the sentences in the Quran, just studying the subject of Nahu, like for example, let's say you go to a scholar and you say to the scholar, please, I want you to summarize for me Nahu in your own words, Mubtada and Khabar and Maf'ul and Fi'l, etc. in your own words, what you think the best Nahu is. And he just tells you that, like he injects it into you, right? He gives you the whole of Nahu in the best way. Alhamdulillah, you've understood the subject at the best level. But you won't know the history of Nahu. So Nahu is a science which, if you watch some of my videos on the history of Nahu, I explain it in there as well. It's actually a science which requires understanding the progression of Nahu, how Nahu progressed and the different schools of Nahu. And then different schools of Nahu will give you a deeper insight into the tafsir of the Quran. Yeah, so that's why it depends what you want. I mean, those two routes for everything, for Balagha, same for Balagha. Like for example, the Balagha courses that I've got on my uruk.com, those are basically what I've done is I've summarized, I've read quite a few books, and I've tried to summarize what I believe is the thing that a student needs to understand Balagha from the Quran. But if you want to further that, if you want to understand the history, the progression, the developments that were made in Balagha, where it started off from, how it kind of branched out, then you need to study the classical books. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Do you follow the Sunnah of the Prophet, brother? Do I follow the Sunnah of the Prophet? I try to. Yeah, I try to. Okay, man, I'm so scared because I don't want to go Jahannam. May Allah save you from Jahannam. May Allah save all of us. Okay, UZL Productions. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Question: is there a particular sunnah method of applying itr, as in where it should be applied? Wrist clothes appears. Okay, there's actually no sunnah way of applying itr. I mean, the thing about I think we're living in a time where, you know, we want to kind of find a sunnah way of doing everything. So some guy goes to me, what's the sunnah way of driving a car? How do you get into a car? What's the sunnah way of getting into a car? What's the sunnah way of wearing a watch? What's the sunnah way of using an iPad? What's the sunnah way of switching off your computer? So I think these are things where people are going a bit too extreme into, you know, the concept of sunnah. The concept of sunnah is basically how we should follow Islam. How the Prophet ﷺ taught us how we should follow it. So for example, those things that are related to Islam, sunnahs are for those. Does that make sense? Anything besides that, although they're called sunnah, what you really mean is how the Prophet ﷺ did it. So there's a difference between how the Prophet ﷺ did it and sunnah. So sometimes a sunnah, an act which is a sunnah, is something which people confuse with a general act of the. So Prophet ﷺ used to eat, but it's not sunnah to eat. Yeah, because eating isn't directly connected to the revelation of Allah. Or for example, like the Prophet ﷺ used to go to sleep. Someone says, I go to sleep as well, so I'm doing the sunnah. No, sleeping isn't directly connected to the message of Allah. So what is connected to the message of Allah, like for example, praying your dhuhr, is connected to the message of Allah. So the way the Prophet ﷺ prayed it, that would be the sunnah. Or for example, like a person who fasts. So fasting is from the message of Allah. So the way the Prophet ﷺ used to fast is the sunnah. But obviously driving a car, riding a camel, these kind of things, technically, according to the scholars of usul fiqh, that isn't a sunnah. That would be considered to be a general practice of the Prophet ﷺ, a way that he would do things. So that's why we see Sahaba wouldn't copy the Prophet ﷺ in everything he did. They would copy him in those things which are related to the message that came from Allah. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So this is why when it came to itr, in fact, the Sahaba used to put itr in their hair. So what they would do is they would split their hair, and they would have this perfume which was kind of like a solid kind of perfume in the form of oil, and they would put it right over here. They would rub it here, and that perfume would actually make the middle parting, it's called the mafraq, it would make it white. And in lots of poetry, if you read lots of poetry, classical Arabic poetry, the Arabs, men used to put the perfume there. They wouldn't put it on their bodies. Yeah, it was generally, that's where the perfume was for the men. So a lot of you guys are going to have to start putting your perfumes in your head now. So that was a special type of perfume that was designed, it was an oil that was put into the head. But I mean, with regards to sunnah, I've never heard of Sahaba like rubbing it on certain parts of the body and not on other parts. Okay, Hamza Jundi. Oh yes, lol. Okay, Mushu Man. Assalamu alaikum. How should Muslims deal with sectarian differences in general? Is there any point in the constant debating Sunni, Shia and Deobandi differences anymore, even between ulama? I mean, I totally agree. I mean, a lot of the differences between sectarian differences that we have are not really differences. It's just something that is sometimes academic. Like for example, many of you guys don't know Arabic grammar, and you don't know that there's a big debate between grammarians of whether you can start a sentence off with a indefinite noun. Can you start a sentence off with an indefinite noun, yes or no? There's a big debate about this, and there's schools on this, like madhabs, big madhabs, and they've written books against each other on this issue. So I mean, none of you guys know about this, and you guys are getting on with your lives. So it's not really something that's going to affect you. So a lot of these differences are academic differences, are like in the book differences, in the library differences. They're not supposed to manifest in the real world. So this is why, I mean, generally I think we should focus on rectifying ourselves and our societies rather than, spending too much time in trying to debate. Yes, if a problem becomes very bad and there is, there's a lot of friction between communities, then sometimes it might be a good idea to debate it out, right? But to have it in a way that's respectful as well, and to respect the other party. But generally, I don't think we should get involved in this. And I think things like, that Hyde Park, what is it called? Speaker's Corner. I think I personally think those kind of events are really bad. Yeah, I'm not really passionate about that. And sometimes I watch it, Brother Muhammad Hijab and these guys on it, but I think it's pointless trying to. If you want to debate someone, you debate someone. You don't record it. Now, when you record it, what's happened is you're creating a culture now, and that culture out there now becomes in the mind that you have to join a side, like a football team or a cricket team, and then all the baggage that comes with joining a side, it's just gonna come. So I personally against this kind of, making or publicizing. If you want to debate in Hyde Park, fine, debate. It doesn't matter. Debate with someone. But if you want to publicize it, what do you want to show? Do you want to show how correct you are to the whole world and how wrong the other person is? So everyone's doing that. Anyway, that's on my views. Wa alaikum assalam, Tahmeed. MashaAllah, that's a big ustad there. Are Shia Muslim? Is Tarawih compulsory? Are Shia Muslim? Inshallah, Shia Muslim. Yeah. It's all. A person out of Islam depends on their belief. Yeah. So, like Shia would say, are Sunnis Muslim? Yeah. So, it's all about that. Is Tarawih compulsory? It's Sunnah Muakkada. Okay, Mushuman, do you think it's outdated to bring these kinds of debates to UK, which is regressive and prevents? Yeah, definitely. Like as I said just now, these kind of Hyde Park kind of things. It's the kind of, in the olden days, you used to have from back home Indo-Pak debates that were debated in the last century. They brought over here, and now they're dying out. But now you have things like, the Hyde Park. I think that is something we've got to be very careful with that as well, of how we kind of debate with other people. This isn't the climate of like debating like that. Okay, how can I learn anything relevant about Tawheed? Any books you can recommend? Quran. Best book is Quran. Quran is the best. Seriously, it's no joke. Quran is the book, because all books that have been written by Muslim scholars are in service of the Quran. So therefore, whatever is in the Quran, if you understand that, study the Quran properly, study it from someone, and what is in the Quran, as long as you believe in that, you will enter Jannah, inshallah. Yeah. Okay. Some shops were HMC, then for a while they weren't, and now they are. So would they be doubtful, as it is best not to eat? The thing why I have a friend who used to be HMC, he's a butcher's, but then he stopped. And the reason he stopped was many reasons. And he's a good guy. His meat is all halal, by the way. So he said the reason I stopped was because one was that, unfortunately, some individuals in HMC were harassing him a lot. The way they used to kind of, do the monitoring and all that. And the meat that used to come to him was not at the good quality. And also, he says that what began to happen was that it was just too expensive. It was too expensive. He couldn't run a business by getting HMC meat because the prices were much higher than if a normal person slaughters an animal. So it wasn't that he was conning people. He just said, look, I can't. And he goes, I know a lot of customers will stop coming to me because I don't have a HMC stamp anymore. He goes, but my meat is all halal. It's all slaughtered properly. And that guy, I trust him totally. So sometimes what happens is you have to understand why businesses stop with HMC. HMC is like, it's not the halal certification, and if you don't have HMC, it's not halal, right? It's just a way. If you want to kind of clear your doubts, you follow HMC. Alhamdulillah. I personally, as long as I believe it's halal, I'll eat it, whether it's HMC or other. Okay, Muhammad Ahmed, start loving the shirt. Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Yeah, it's hot today, so I had to wear this. Yeah, so the material is quite good as well. Jazakallah khair, Muhammad Ahmed. MP, I bought pigskin shoes but only found out after a month that they were pigskin, so couldn't return. What should I do with them? Can I sell them? Yeah, there's scope, yeah, because is it all made? I don't think is the whole shoe isn't made from it, is it? Yeah, what I would do is you can possibly, if you can't return them, you can possibly sell them, and if you get more for what you paid for, the excess give it in charity, and the amount that you get back from the initial amount, then keep that. Yeah. Okay, made of pigskin. Minimalism, that's the word. Minimalism. Yeah. About the food, yeah. Okay, about the food, what about the food? Or was it the earlier thing that you said, what if they're lying? Yeah, if they're lying about the food, then that's it. If they're lying, that's the sin is upon them. Yeah, the sin is upon them. Ultimately, we should be careful of what we eat. We shouldn't always be eating outside, right? We should, try to cook food ourselves, eat at home. That was the culture in the olden days. People used to eat at home. So try to eat at home. I bought a gift for someone, I hadn't given it yet, and then after a bit we became distant. Now we chat occasionally. Do I still have to give the gift? No, you don't have to give the gift. Okay, or can I keep the gift for myself? The intention when I bought the gift was to give it to the person. No, you don't have to. So a gift, only because it becomes theirs, is when you give it to someone. So when you give it to someone and they take possession of it, legally, Islamically, that gift is theirs now, and you shouldn't take it back. To the Prophet ﷺ said, anyone who takes back the gift that they've given to someone, it's like a dog who swallows his own vomit. It's so despicable. That's what it's resembled to with. Yeah, so it's fine. I mean, if you want to give the gift to me, I pass it over. What is the ruling on washing ear piercings? So what's the ruling on washing ear piercings? So, I mean, I don't understand. Washing them. I mean, you want to get water there. Yeah, so I mean, you just try to get water there. If you can move it slightly, yeah, move it. Yeah, move it. You should try to be able to at least try to move it or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't have any ear piercings, so I don't know how they work. Is it? Are the ear piercings too tight? Are they loose? How are they? What is the ruling on washing ear? Mushuman. Was the Prophet ﷺ affected by magic? I understand this was the reason the two Qul surahs were revealed, and commentators say no, he wasn't, but I still can't seem to reconcile. Yes, I've talked about this before. Yeah, I mentioned this before. So there's an ikhtilaf amongst later scholars with regards to whether the Prophet ﷺ was affected by magic. Narrations seem to say yes, that he was, and they answer the narrations by interpreting them by saying if he was affected by magic, then his message from Allah would be put into doubt, as in people would bring, ask that how could the Prophet ﷺ, who was given the message, guarantee that he delivered the message properly if he was affected by magic? So the simple answer to that, I would say, would be that the Prophet ﷺ, imagine magic as being an illness. So one is a physical illness and one is like an illness of the mind. Yeah. So physical illness and illness of the mind both can affect a person, and they can affect the Prophet ﷺ. So because of this, the Prophet ﷺ was affected. However, the unique thing about the Prophet ﷺ was that any time he made a mistake, Allah would always correct him. So that means that if the Prophet ﷺ was affected with magic and he made a mistake, Allah would have corrected him straight away. And because Allah did not correct him, therefore we say that the Prophet ﷺ was possibly affected with magic, and it didn't affect the message. Yeah, so their question kind of is answered. How should we pray on a plane? Can we pray in the seat, or is it best to stand up? Yes, you can pray in the seat. If there's no place to stand up due to health and safety, you can pray in the seat. It's fine. So out of a need, if there's an other and a genuine excuse, you are allowed to sit down. Jazakallah khair for answering the questions. Can you show a book, please? I just got Surah Mihayat Sahaba Tabi'een. MashaAllah. So you got that book? Yeah, excellent. Very good book. Okay, Hazrat, you are a legend. Alhamdulillah. Obviously. I don't joke. What is the ruling for a person in the state of janaba replying to the adhan? Yeah, it'd be fine. You can reply to it. You can only not read the Quran. However, some scholars say that it's preferred to be in the state of tahara to do any dhikr of Allah. That's just preferred, but it's not necessary. Mushuman, how would you interpret Khidr alayhi salam taking the life of a child who he later said would grow up as a bad person? I understand that this child may now go to Jannah, but is still not innocent child. I don't understand. I'm not clear with that. I understand what you're saying there. So Khidr alayhi salam, the child that he killed. I mean, the thing is, look, when Allah creates the world, Allah's created the world in such a way that this world will come with all the byproducts of earthly life. So for example, like being born from parents, dying, suffering illnesses, suffering tragedies, having abuse, rape, murder, drugs. All these things are part and parcel of worldly life. These are things that are going to happen. They're going to affect people. They're going to affect people who are pious. They're going to affect people who are non-pious. Men, women, everyone is going to be affected by this, because as long as you're living in this world, you have to abide by the rules of this world. Yeah, this is how it works. Now, part of this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is in control of everything. And the divine destiny, or the taqdeer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is so complicated. It is so complicated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told Sahaba not to debate about the taqdeer of Allah. And there's actually this program series, and I saw a bit of it. It was about this kid. I don't know what it's called. I think it's called Touch or something. Touch. It's about this kid, and he's got his mother died in the 9/11 incident, and then this kid is supposed to have some sort of autism or something. He never talks, but the kid, he comes out with these these numbers or these statements or things, and it's like as though everything is linked together. Yeah. So the whole point of what I'm trying to say is that if you want to understand how taqdeer works, that is a very good commentary on it, I would say. Yeah, it's a very kind of like what I was thinking, many years ago, before I saw this. That's what I was thinking, that the taqdeer of Allah is so, everything in the world is like connected together. So, for example, if you go to work late one day, you going to work late is going to have a ripple effect on everything. You got to work late and you were driving your car, and because you're going to get to work late, there's another car who is going to have to slow down because of you. And then when you went past the lights and he had to stay behind because of you, this happened. And when you got to work late, someone came just before you arrived to deliver a parcel, and you weren't there to sign it, and they had to go to the post office. And then because of that, now later on in the day, you have to go to the post office, and you went to the post office, and in the post office you met your long lost friend that you never saw before, and then you exchanged numbers with him, and then weeks went by, and then that person, he phoned you and he needed something from you, and then it's like everything fits together. So the Khidr alayhi salam story, I think, is a story in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing the intricacies of things in the world that we don't even know that happens. Allah in the Quran hasn't told us how the universe works. He hasn't told us how the angels function. He hasn't told us how other creations He has. And if you follow my Balagha series I've been doing, the latest one I put up, in there the verse mentions about يَوْمَ يَقُومُ الرُّوحُ, and Mufassirin have mentioned that Ruh is a creation of Allah, according to many Mufassirin, which is beyond angels. It's such a powerful creation, beyond the angels even. It's a mighty creation. So there are creations out there we don't even know about. There could be a Khidr creation we don't even know, and this child could have been part of that. And this was sometimes, there's actually another, I'm talking about these films and things, there's actually another film who is basically, I can't remember what the name of the film is, but it's basically what happens is, like, there are this organization, and every time everyone has to function on one sort of blueprint, and every time it goes off slightly, they pause time, they come in and they fix everything again as it should be, and then they check out the kind of the program, and the program tells them everything's on schedule, so then they start time again. And it's happened. There's one man, he gets caught up in this. That's what the whole film is about. The point I'm making is that sometimes we try to project our own understanding of the world onto the Quran. So we see things and we think the Quran has to mean, how can the Quran be talking about something that is not happening in our observable world? So that's why I think the Khidr alayhi salam story is like a strange thing, which is, and the whole Surah Kahf is a very strange set of events that happen in Surah Kahf. Yeah, people that go to sleep for 309 years. Yeah, you have this this man that travels the east and the west, and he goes and builds a wall for this Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and then Musa alayhi salam having to travel, and this fish going out. So I think, yeah. But aren't you sinful if you give haram shoes for someone else to wear? I mean, if you, not necessarily. Like I said, the scholars do say that, if you are like, if you can't own something haram, and you can't do tamalluk of haram, you can't do tamlik of haram. So you can't own haram and you can't give haram. The reason I'm saying this is because you're in a situation where you bought shoes that have pig skin on there. Now, because you paid for that, and that could cost a lot, sometimes shoes can cost up to 50, 60, 70 pounds. So what I would say is that because you can't give it back to them, and now you're going to lose out on a lot of money, and you didn't know this, what I would say, if you sell it to someone for whom it is halal, for non-Muslims it's halal, it's permissible for them to buy these things, then the money that you receive back, as long as you get back the money which you paid for the shoes initially, any excess you give in charity. Okay, a few more, then we'll finish. Do we need wudu? Do you have wudu to pray Quran on smartphone? Ideally, you should. Can we sign up for free 1-month trials with Amazon, etc., with different emails, or is it sinful to cheat the system? No, if it's part of their policy, if they say you can sign up, right? You can sign up. It's fine. I normally use EE-SIM. I bought a 3-SIM to use the 3 app, so I topped it up. Then I removed the SIM and put my EE-SIM back in. 3 app has offers such as money of food, free coffees, discounts. Is it permissible for me to benefit from the 3 apps deal? In the terms of condition, it says as long as you top up and send a text within 6 to 12 months, your SIM stays active. Yeah, seems fine. I mean, it's a gift from them. Totally fine. And let's see if it is cheaper or free to get software, e.g. Adobe software from another website or eBay rather than pay for the full price of official website. Is that permissible? Possibly. If it's very expensive, I would say there's scope, but otherwise, I mean, try to pay for it. Personally, if there's like an expensive piece of software, and I really need it, or a book, but I can get a free version of it from torrents or something, then I might get that. Yeah, if I can't afford it, that is. But if I can afford it, then what I'll do, I wouldn't get the pirate one. Yeah, so that's basically. Okay, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, respected Sheikh. In a marriage contract, if the father demands that the girl and husband will not have a contract to each other until there has been a wedding, isn't this invalid? I don't understand. If the father demands the girl and the husband will not have contract to each other until contact to each other until there has been, isn't this invalid? Yeah, if nikah has been done, then legally both have the right to see each other, talk to each other, meet each other, have intimacy. So no one is allowed to stop them unless there is some real strong reason, like for example one is age issues, yeah, or for example some other issues. But generally no, yeah, it's not permissible for the father to do that. If shopping online and you find a free delivery discount code that is only allowed on certain items or for spending certain amounts of money, but you use it on your items, is that permissible to do so? These were cheap shoes, they were around £20. Okay, so if shopping on an online and you find a free delivery discount code that is only allowed on certain items or for spending certain amount of money, but you use it on your items, I don't understand the question. I'm not sure. These shoes were cheap, around 20. I mean, if you think they were cheap, then just throw them away. Them. If you think they were cheap and no one needs them, you can give it to charity if you want. Yeah, you can give it to charity. But yeah, if you think they were cheap, that's fine. Answers your question. Okay, so I think all the questions are finished now. Any more questions on here? Let me just have a check. So Jazakallah khair, guys, for okay, there's one question here. Can women get their private area waxed or lasered by another female? And no. Yeah, no, you can't. Yeah, so these kind of things, there has to be a limit on how much dignity and honor that we have, and showing private area to people that it's not necessary for, unless for medical reasons. So if, for example, for medical reasons, a doctor has told you must get this done, and it's not possible for a person themselves to do it, then that might be allowed. But otherwise, just if it's out of choice, Okay, could you help me understand surah? The other way is if the person who waxes does not look at that area and just applies the wax and removes the hair without looking at the area is covered, then there's scope there. But through laser, I'm sure the laser would require looking at the area, yeah, so it doesn't damage the health. Could you help me understanding Surah Sabah verse 14? What happened when the worm ate Suleiman? Staff and jinn knew they were humiliated. I'll have to answer that. I mean, I don't have the Quran in front of me. I'm not a Hafiz of Quran. Okay, Jazakallah khair, Jazakallah khair. If at work someone is transgender and they physically switch genders and you aren't aware of this, if you shake hands with them, would you be sinful? Transgender issues, I have no idea. Seriously, I have no idea of how to deal with these. I mean, this requires scholars to come together and come to some sort of like some fatwas regarding this, because this is going to become a new thing, and we're going to see in the next 10 years we are going to see so many incidents of this. We're going to have issues like transgender people coming to the masjid as well. Yeah, what are you going to do when a transgender person accepts Islam, and they've had operations and have had all the hormones and everything changed? What do they do? So it's a very difficult situation. May Allah protect us from these times. So I really don't know. Seriously, I don't know. Also, what would be ruling if they haven't physically switched genders but they call themselves transgender? Yeah, if a person calls themselves transgender, they haven't had any sort of switch. No, then you treat them as whatever they were born as. Yeah. All right. So, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much, guys. Inshallah, hopefully next time I'll try to answer more questions. I think that answers all your questions. Some of you guys, mashallah, have whole lists of questions. And sometimes what I do is some of your questions, I actually give some of your questions to some of my students to research, so it helps them in their studying fiqh. So anything else anyone wants to say? Anything interesting just to finish off? Yeah. No more questions because I won't be able to answer anymore. Oh, book. Oh yeah. Okay, so let's have a look. A book. Let me see. Okay, so remember I told you about in the beginning. I told you about Dr. Fadil Saleh Samurai. Yeah. So this is one of his books. It's in Arabic grammar. Nahu al-Arabi is called. Yeah, Nahu al-Arabi. So this is 2 volumes and it's very, very good. I would suggest anyone who's studying Arabic Nahu to read this. The reason I think it's very good is, number one, it's very simply laid out, very, very easy to follow. Yeah, and because he's gone through so many like classical books of Nahu, he has a very good way of presenting information in a very nice style. And the second benefit is he lots of Arabic ayats. So he mentioned lots of ayats, verses of the Quran, to support what he's saying. So he applies a lot of the Nahu to ayats, which is very useful. And the third thing is he also adds in like balagha points as well in this. So like he'll mention a nahu kind of issue, and then he'll add like, what's the benefit of this? Like if Allah uses this word instead of this word, if he uses a jumla ismiya instead of a jumla fi'liya, a verb based sentence instead of a noun based sentence, what's the difference between the two? What would the effect of the meaning be? And this gives students, I think, a lot of motivation, and it inspires them to learn Arabic more. Sometimes what happens when you study Arabic grammar, you get bored of it. Okay, was that enough? Was that one book enough? Yeah, inshallah. There's many other books out there, but this one I think is very good. And I've got some other books of his as well. You can get them online as well. Yeah, so try to find, if you're very interested in like balagha points in the Quran, then he's got this collection, two books. I think it's called Tariqul Bayan or something. It's called Tariqul Bayan, Tariqul Bayan, something like that. Yeah, which is a very good book. And that kind of goes through certain surahs in the Quran, and he breaks it down for you, and he gives you like a nice approach. And some of the ways I teach my tafsir, I borrow from him as well in many other things. Okay, Ustad, did you see the Pakistan game today? No, actually didn't see it, but I was updated regularly. A lot of people were updating me of what's happening. So I heard that they were started off well, and in the middle they were doing rubbish, and then right at the end they somehow won the match. Okay, I'm not too keen in sports that much. I'm not too much of a sports enthusiast. I like playing sports, but I'm not too much into Okay, will you be carrying on the Surah Mulk translation you are doing in Ramadan? Oh yeah. I was actually supposed to continue tomorrow, so I was gonna advertise it this week and say to have it tomorrow, but tomorrow I've got a few events to go to, so I won't be able to make it tomorrow. It's been too difficult. So maybe next week, next Sunday, I might do it next Sunday, start next Sunday again. So inshallah, make dua. I want to know if it's allowed to change the last name to your original last name, as my father changed the family last name. Yeah, it's fine. You can change names. There's nothing wrong with changing names. Abdul, Assalamu alaikum assalam. Why is the Alim course done in the UK shorter in years than the one in Pakistan? Also, is it true that certain books like Hidayah are not complete in the UK? I mean, I think the reason why it's done shorter in the UK is simply because the passion of studying is very low in the UK. Yeah, the caliber of student in the UK generally is quite low, and because in the UK what's happened is they've merged the Alim course with school. They've watered it down in a lot of places, so that's one of the biggest problems you have. And Hidayah is not taught all in. I don't think it's taught. The whole of it is not taught anywhere in England, unless you study on the side with someone privately and you finish it. Okay. Okay, there's a man who is starting a transgender journey after years of struggle. He wants to convert to Islam as well. Would a Christian male be able to become and accepted as a Muslim woman? I don't know, I truly have no idea, because this is one of the fatwas, like, requires a lot of new kind of research. Very difficult to kind of say anything. Need to ask a question about salat. Okay. So I saw something about the Prophet making salat, and it said when doing the tashahhud, does one point the index finger the whole time until it's... There's a difference of opinion. Yeah, a difference of opinion. Some of the scholars say that you hold it all the way for the duration of the tashahhud. Some of them say you only hold it for a short portion. Yeah, so there's a difference of opinion about that. I mean, according to the Hanafi school, you only raise it when you say La ilaha illallah. So you raise it for La ilaha. So La ilaha illallah. Okay, and my last question, and that's it. Yeah, so see, the thing about the raising of the finger and any act in the salat is a lot of it's based upon observations of Sahaba, and you have different observations take place over 23 years. So that's why there's so many different kind of descriptions of how the Prophet ﷺ held his hands, or how he used to raise his finger, or how he used to clench his fingers as well. So when you study these, when you learn about these, you become more aware of why it's important to study a methodology in approaching Islamic law, like a madhab, because the madhab, it gives you a structure of how you're going to approach the text, how you're going to understand it. Okay, alright. What would the ruling for Muslim marriage apps such as Muzmatch and Minder? These are more forward. I don't know. I have never been on these, so I don't know how they work. I don't know how exactly these websites work, apps work. Yeah, so I mean, it's possible. It depends how it works. I mean, brother Abdul Samad, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much, guys. I will have to finish there. So Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward all of you guys and bless you guys, and hopefully keep you alive, inshallah, for our next question and answer session as well. And hopefully the weather should remain nice so that we can enjoy a bit of summer in the UK as well. Anyway, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much. Was there any other book that I want to show you guys? Okay, no other book. Alright, so Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. Take care, inshallah. Remember in your du'as, and remember all the rest of the guys in your du'as as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.